Hello and welcome to the program. This Thursday, we want to look back at what happened on Wednesday in Abuja, the Nigerian capital. We celebrated the Armed Forces Remembrance Day, a day in which we honor, we give value, and we say thank you to our military men, officers and men who lay down their lives that this country may survive. This year's edition was a little different, a little expanded, because it was an opportunity to say thank you to both the dead and the living. Now, some months or thereabout before yesterday's event, before the Wednesday event, some veterans, military veterans, had encamped at the headquarters of the Ministry of Finance. And while were they there? They were asking to be paid their pensions. Now, some say that was not good enough, just few days to the Armed Forces Remembrance Day. But some of us say, no, it was showing the premium the Nigerian state places on the military institution. Now, some 10 days after that encampment, the Chief of Defense Staff, Christopher Musa, Major General Christopher Musa, raised the same issue while appearing on television. He said that the leadership of the Nigerian military was going to prioritize the welfare of officers and men. Now, take a break and look around the Nigerian environment. A number of states around Nigeria are unraveling. Boko Haram and other non-state actors are making life uncomfortable for Nigerians. And the defense chief said something. He said, good governance would help the military operate optimally. And he pointed to Nigeria's ungoverned territories, ungoverned locations, where the population has become easy for non-state actors to recruit. Now, this raises a question. What kind of military does Nigeria need? And this morning, I have the pleasure of welcoming to our studio here in Abuja the former defense spokesperson, retired Major General Chris Olukolade. Major General, you're welcome to our studio.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the privilege.
You must have heard the background I laid. But let me start from Nigeria's environment. Francophone nations surround Nigeria by accident of history. Their worldview is different. Their perspectives to even development is different from ours. And sometimes there are frictions, there are misunderstandings. The definition of territory and how to govern those territories is a little different. Is there any role the Nigerian military as an institution can play to create harmony and understanding between Nigeria and its neighbors?
Well, thank you for this. And I think it could be deduced from our foreign policy position as a country, from which military interactions we derive. The military is loyal first and foremost to the state. And so state interests that determine how it wants to relate with its neighbors would determine how the military responds to that, either the neighborhood or that environment. Now, back to our relationship with our neighboring countries, I think following from the policy of the nation of, Afrocentric policy of the nation, all along, the military has always played along. And I dare say that there hasn't been, in terms of interacting with the neighboring militaries, there hasn't been much friction. We've always collaborated. For instance, when we went to ECOMOG, even while the issue was still controversial in international circles, part of those who operated with the Nigerian forces in Liberia and Sierra Leone were the Guinean forces, the Francophone countries, and we interacted very well. We interacted very well. Some of the equipment were very useful to us, and their approach to operations also was a way of us learning, their own methods in operating. And like I said, where the equipment was being exchanged, some areas of the mission was assigned to them, and they delivered. And we devised ways of interacting in spite of linguistic differences. And it has also influenced our training, because the training in the Nigerian military now also takes notice of that, in terms of ensuring that many officers are versed in the French language, which is their own language of communication, because of the experience we had in battles together, of issues of communications, and on and on. I think these are areas that the military has been responding to foreign policy position of the nation.
Let me dwell a little bit on that. You just talked about training.
Yes.
One of the areas I've seen the American, British armies create diplomatic harmony is by accommodating military of other nations in their training scheme.
Yes.
Because it creates a brotherhood, as it were.
Correct.
Just Nigerian military open its training facilities to some of those Francophone countries?
Francophone countries, yes, but I would rather say it's even a broader format. Other African countries and the Francophone, but it's easier to relate with the Anglophone, the English-speaking countries, and there's no doubt that even at a point, the initial training of cadets for countries like Liberia and Sierra Leone took place in Nigeria, of almost an entire generation of officers. When the Sierra Leonean forces were being repackaged, most of it was done through the Nigerian training systems. You find that initially the Royal West African Frontier Force training have always been together with particularly fellow Francophone Anglophone countries. This may not be as detailed as it is with the Francophone, because if you are coming from there, you need to learn the language here. And but that has not precluded the likelihood, even up to the present moment, of having officers, soldiers from neighboring countries come to exploit, take opportunities available in the training system of the Nigerian military.
Let me remain on the African continent. Nigeria is Africa's biggest democracy. Nigeria was once Africa's biggest economy. I'm told now we are rebasing, and for now Nigeria is just about the second largest African economy. Nigerian professionals and intellectuals are all over the place, and the Nigerian economy, in terms of its independence, is a little more robust than many other African economies. Permit me to observe that this creates a little bit of envy, a little bit. In international relations, it does create a little bit of envy. The Nigerian military, what role ought it to be playing in sustaining the leadership, the prime position of Nigeria in the African continent?
I think I mentioned earlier that this will be subject to the
policy
position of the political, the political leadership. So far, I think it's been well managed. The response of the military to, interpreting and implementing the position of the nation in international circles have never been in doubt. And I'm sure you also know that dating back to history and up to the moment, the military has defense attaches in all these countries, by which we're also able to develop our relationship, at least in professional circles. You used the word earlier, let me pay attention to that. The likelihood of envy. I think all of this is related to interest. Everybody pursues his interest to the best of his ability, and that's why the military must, and I think it does, to try to understand what really is the position of the country and advance it in every relationship it is privileged to have with either military counterparts or others in other countries.
Let me come home. Intra-Nigeria. So many interests internally are talking at Nigerian state. There is Boko Haram. There is ISWAP. There are separatist interests. There are political bloc interests, all pulling at the nation. And the Nigerian military is said to be one institution that seems to coalesce all interests. It's not a divided institution. Is there anything the military can do to help, without getting involved in politics, to help harmonize these centrifugal, centripetal forces all pulling at Nigeria, everybody trying to take away its own interest from the nation?
I think in response to your question, you too will know that, judging by the way it has performed so far, particularly within the democratic environment, the military has been very much available in ensuring the unity of Nigeria. It actually has no option, for the fact that by virtue of its oath, the oath of office of every military personnel, they are committed to the unity of Nigeria. Now, the training and interaction, you really don't determine who will be your colleague in the day of battle or death. So there's a bond within the military itself. That's an important factor in driving the unity of this nation. Now, also to understand and make it a priority, perhaps more than other institutions, the military has believed more and have, by way of sacrifice and understanding. Many times this is misinterpreted. What you meant to say, and I agree with you, is for the military to achieve this has to show a lot of apolitical disposition. It must not be seen to be, either driving a tribal sentiment or political partisanship. I think the military has tried to be above board in this. I've been privileged to observe a lot of transitions. If you see the way the military adjusts to those transitions, they look commendable. For the fact that when there is about to be a change in government, the gladiators, the political parties do everything to pull the military into it. Somehow it has been able to stand, to stay above board, once at least to a large extent. And I think that in itself is an asset to the nation. I've had to caution sometimes, particularly politicians, that the trouble, especially in electioneering years, the years of election, every effort is done to draw the military into it, or even influence military operations with a view to outplaying rival political parties. I give the caution that even if we end up winning an election, this same military will be available to you to defend the nation. So there's leave it out of your contest and don't draw the military into partisanship. Those are the major threats, but the military has been able to be above board in spite of this. They have adjusted to different political parties coming to power, and I don't think this has been in doubt in terms of their commitment to the unity of Nigeria.
Allow me to observe that with internal challenges, insecurity, you see our military virtually everywhere. Allow me also to observe that sometimes you see our military officers do what we in the media may consider not their role. See them on roadblocks. Sometimes see them escorting VIPs. Do you think that our military is being misused and abused?
I think they're rather responding to some immediate needs and challenges. Responding in the sense that, for instance, you observed earlier that in virtually every state of the Federation, it's not the desire of the military. You have had the leadership a number of times declare that this really is not, it's not as if it's a pleasant work they want, but the military must be at the disposal of the political leadership in driving the interests of the nation. If the leadership feels, look, we trust more in your capacity to manage the situation, we don't wish to have a military that will say, no, we will not cooperate. So, first of all, being available in all these places is not the desire of the military, but it shows that they are there and they are doing it well. Indicates the level to which they can adjust, which is part of what training imposes in you, to adjust to the the demands of the time. And that's possibly what gets them involved. As for escorting, being in roadblocks, if that's what the operation at the moment demands, as a way of either preventive or respond to situations, I don't think it is a thing happening all the time. It's just to respond to particular situations. And once they get over that situation, they face other approaches to it. I'm almost tempted to give an illustration.
Kindly do.
And the illustration is that when there is no war, most intellectuals and Nigerians tend to have the feeling that we don't need the military, we don't need them in this number. What are they doing? By the way, let them go. At a point, there was this advocacy that the military should go to the farms. I don't know if you remember that time.
I do.
And that they should, so that they can be productive, in the belief that they are really not productive. When there is no war, the business of the military is to be training, preparatory to the day of war or crisis to handle. Now, there was this tendency that since there was no war, no crisis, some literally felt like disband them, they are not useful. But when the issue suddenly came upon us, for instance, the terrorism you referred to earlier, initially the people in Maiduguri and in the Northeast were feeling these soldiers are just nuisance around here. But when they saw the desperation of the enemies of the country, everybody kept saying, where are these soldiers? A soldier is not produced in 3 days.
Give us the soldiers.
Give us, where are the, everybody who has problems, say, where are the soldiers? We can't see soldiers. It takes time to produce soldiers. It takes time to produce the equipment they will use. And these are the kind of challenges the nation faces. But for each of these, the military have proved that they are responsive, adjusting to each of these demands as the situation calls for it.
Major General, do you think that the number in the Nigerian military is enough to serve and service the interests of this country?
At the moment, I can categorically say no. And I think both the military and political leadership realize that. And but you know, it also has implication in the economy of the nation. It's not just, like I said earlier, a soldier is not produced in 3 days or in 2 minutes. It takes time to train him, and the training process involves a lot of expenditure. It involves a lot of wear and tear of equipment, and all of these are expensive. But certainly at the moment, the improvement has to be incremental. What do I mean? On a regular basis, relative to the availability of resources, we keep recruiting and training and preparing for war. But at the moment, it is obvious that there is drive towards increasing the number. In response to you, I would say there is need to keep increasing. The number is certainly not adequate at the moment. And I mean boots on ground. the men that drive this. Although at the moment warfare is tending more to technology, and the military is equally adjusting to that.
You just say that warfare is tending more to technology.
Yeah.
That's going to push me to a question I was reserving for later, but let me address it now. I understand that Arab contractors, the construction company, is an offshoot of the Egyptian military. Just before we began this conversation, I said to you, I was in Liberia with Nigerian military, and that I saw firsthand the competence of the military corps, the engineering corps of the Nigerian military when they crossed the Mano River. In other words, within the military institution in Nigeria, there is a mass of not just intellectuals, but professionals. Maybe now that there's crisis, they are being used. Brazil has developed a defense industry so much that it's an integral part of its economy. United States makes billions every year from its military industrial complex. UK are colonial masters. Milk its former colonies dry, making money from their military hardware. Yet with this mass of both intellectuals, technologists, scientists in the Nigerian military, don't you think that the Nigerian military should be part of kickstarting the advancement of both technology, infrastructure, and engineering in Nigeria?
I agree with you, but I also let you know that the military as an issue has not been dormant in this respect. We mentioned earlier that the issues are responsive to the economy of state, the state position in terms of the economy. Nevertheless, the Defense Industries Corporation you mentioned earlier, I've had a lot of wrong information about what's going on there. Yes, there was a time that the situation was very bad, but many people don't even know that there's a lot of development around the Defense Industries Corporation in Kaduna and other places. There's a lot of interaction going on. There's a lot of effort for self-sufficiency. Their input to military operation has been increasing. If we find a lot of the equipment that the military uses, much of it, not all indeed, come from the activities of the Defense Industries Corporation. But when I still hear people say all they do is furniture, I think that's a wrong information. They do much more than that. They produce many of the bullets that are in use. And I think they have strived to recover from the state of dormancy people keep referring to. And if we also, yes, in terms of the military industrial complex, a lot of research going on in military institutions, Defense Academy, and various places have emphasized the need for research and development. There's no aspect of the Nigerian Armed Forces that does not have research and development, either at its headquarters or as an independent institution. You find, for instance, the Nigerian Army has the Training and Doctrine Command. All of these ones, most of what they engage in is research. And a lot of input keeps coming from there. You even know that at a point, the medical input from the Nigerian Armed Forces was very vital in terms of a lot of discoveries that have helped medical science generally. So, yes, a lot of know-how, intellectuals and scientists abide in the demand. I think they are working. However, the capacity to maybe give the impression, the high rate impression you are expecting, will always be related to the economy and the funding the nation can provide.
General, the title of this conversation is, what kind of military does Nigeria need? Every question I've raised has shown that the Nigerian military is prepared and capable to deliver on the demands of the Nigerian state. But the Bible says, lead us not into temptation. I will not lead into temptation, but I'll ask a question. Do you think the Nigerian political leadership understands the kind of military the Nigerian state needs, not just for its survival, but including the harmony of the state, its economy, and its place on earth?
Well, thank you for this question. Maybe you notice that my tone has been more optimistic for most of this conversation. But if I'm to state clearly the kind of military we need in a very precise time, a military that is highly motivated, swift and capable of responding to any challenge facing the nation. This has a lot of demand. For it to be highly motivated, will relate to the issues you mentioned in introducing this topic, in terms of motivation of those who are in service at the moment, as well as those who have served before, because their experience, their disposition has a lot to say to those who are in service. Equipment is also a way of welfare that most soldiers or most people in the military will always appreciate. Somebody said the best welfare you can give your people is training. You train them to be able to respond to situation. So a military that is swift, that does not have to panic because it has no equipment to handle a situation. Back to my optimistic position, I think that gradually, particularly the political leadership, are realizing it because of the experience we face. Maybe before, when we didn't have any challenge to face, they were also of the impression that we really don't need these things. But with the rate of insecurity here and there, and the position of security in terms of leadership, which is a major priority for any leadership, has made them to realize that you cannot push the demands for a swift military aside and expect them to be able to respond to any challenge facing the country. Now, all of this put together appears to be the aspiration of those in leadership. You have seen, and luckily, like I said before, we have seen transition from political parties, because previously, anyone who is in opposition feels that the military must be brought down, must be destroyed as part of the assets of their opponent. But now it's clear that people who were possibly of that mindset have also had their own time in leadership. Now they realize that this military too is what we need to achieve the desires of the nation.
Now, in addition to the military personnel in service, is the case that I mentioned at the beginning, the veterans. Apart from government, what would you say to the Nigerian public in appreciating, not just also taking care, honoring, and showing that these men and women were prepared to lay down their lives, that all of us may remain in a stable country? What do you say to the Nigerian public?
Well, the Nigerian public should sustain their present approach to appreciating the military, but I think we can do it better. If we see the example of other countries, I've been in the US a couple of times, and I see the way they honor their veterans in particular. Veterans are those who are fortunate to still be alive. They're the one who can interpret the love the nation expresses to them in appreciation of their service. Those who are dead, we should also show it to their survivors, those who are, who are their dependents alive. Now, anytime most people who have not appreciated the situation react to military, they see it as too much of a nuisance, too much of a demand, too much of excessive care. No, it's not so. There's this saying that in times of war, in the times of war, God and the soldier, people adore. When it is over, God and the soldier, people despise. I think we should get over that element of despise. It will be a good motivation to those who are still serving to give their best for the country if we keep showing appreciation and not despise. You mentioned earlier the need to protest. That was a national embarrassment. And I don't think the veterans meant to embarrass the nation. It was just desperation, because the bureaucrats, those who are still in service, either within the military or outside it, they tend to underrate their own needs while they are still alive. So how can we convince them that they matter? So it's the need for both those in the public at large to use every opportunity to show them, welcome back to society, we love you. And those who are privileged to be serving either in the Ministry of Defense or even the military itself, in packaging policies, they should let the veterans know that they still matter. What led to the protest was because even decisions that have been taken were not being implemented. And who implements decisions? The bureaucrats. So bureaucrats, I mean those who are servicing government interests, should always be compassionate to the veterans.
Well, be compassionate. I tend to disagree with Major General Olukolade in the word compassionate. They should realize that it is a duty that we owe to those who are prepared to die for us, and therefore redeem that duty and honor them. Well, in the past 30 minutes, I've been conversing with former defense spokesperson, retired Major General Chris Olukolade. We've been looking at the kind of military Nigeria needs. Along that line, we also touched on the welfare and the premium we place on Nigerian military. Major General, thank you for coming to the show.
Thank you for this privilege, and I appreciate our viewers for the privilege of giving us this audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And for you who watched us, we want to thank you for following us this Thursday. Good morning.